The Earth is under attack by mysterious forces, and this conflict poses great risks, with only a 10% chance of survival for the population. Catherine, a senior expert at the astronomy research base, unexpectedly receives a super high-frequency signal from outer space. After comparing the data, Catherine determines that no natural phenomenon could generate this signal. The only plausible explanation is that it's a message from extraterrestrial life. The Earth is under attack by mysterious forces, and this conflict poses great risks, with only a 10% chance of survival for the population. Catherine, a senior expert at the astronomy research base, unexpectedly receives a super high-frequency signal from outer space. After comparing the data, Catherine determines that no natural phenomenon could generate this signal. The only plausible explanation is that it's a message from extraterrestrial life. Rada has discovered a large number of objects rapidly approaching Earth at an incredible speed, awaiting their reaction. The objects have just passed through the atmosphere, descending towards the Earth with a trajectory spanning half its length. Everyone in the base is tense, sweating profusely. However, after a few minutes have passed, the anticipated catastrophic scene depicted by the images from the field does not unfold. Instead, what falls to the ground: all schools and airports are temporarily closed, and citizens are encouraged to stay at home. Inspectors quickly arrived at the scene to confirm that the objects that fell to the ground were circular metal objects. No biological elements were detected in the surrounding area, but there was a stronger magnetic field. Although no imminent danger was identified, Catherine's intuition grew stronger, unlike a friendly greeting. However, several hours passed, and these metal objects showed no signs of change. Only the strength and width of the magnetic field around them continued to increase. Catherine speculated that extraterrestrial life might be scanning the entire Earth, but she sensed that things were not as simple as they seemed. The metallic spheres fell in densely populated areas, suggesting they might be an unknown weapon. At this point, the electromagnetic field strength of the metallic sphere was intensifying, and Professor Bin speculated that humanity might be facing a catastrophe. The first thing Bin did was to call his son, who worked at the Ministry of Defense, advising him to evacuate the population immediately, guiding them to shelters or secure metal spaces. However, this action exceeded. Evacuation was deemed too costly, and this speculation lacked factual basis, leading to the rejection of the evacuation proposal. Nevertheless, despite the Minister of Security's refusal, Bin trusted his father's judgment. After careful consideration, he decided to announce the impending Earth attack on his social media. In reality, many citizens were already feeling uneasy without his reminder. Sarah, a market vendor, called, "This is the result of the strong magnetic field affecting the atmosphere." Without the need for speculation, it's evident that a greater catastrophe is imminent. Pedestrians on the road began to panic, realizing that something larger was approaching. Sarah knew she couldn't wait any longer, so she stepped on the gas, swiftly turned her car around, and headed towards the underground parking lot beside the adjacent building. After a series of quick maneuvers, as a result, the lights began to flicker, and Catherine immediately sensed that something was amiss. She quickly called her sister to inquire about her whereabouts. At that moment, Sophia was stuck on a blocked road and couldn't proceed. Catherine advised her to exit the car, find cover, such as a rocky cave, to hide. Just then, the phone signal was cut off, and the power in the research base also became erratic. Recognizing the abnormality, the car on the road suddenly stalled, prompting her to start running, seeking survival. Now, the entire city was without power, and the world seemed to have hit a pause button, becoming eerily quiet. It was unclear how much time had passed when a man emerged from a tanker truck. The once bustling streets, now silent and deserted, stretched endlessly. Unexpectedly, Professor Bin's prediction was accurate. The metallic spheres scattered throughout. Although this catastrophe unfolded silently, it caused immense losses for humanity. Karm was relatively fortunate as he was caught stealing at the port at night, detected by security. He managed to climb onto a waiting oil tanker to escape temporarily, luckily avoiding the electronic disaster sweeping through. Sarah's family also had a stroke of luck. They successfully escaped the electronic havoc at the subway station when the sky began to dawn. Joining the crowd on the facing difficulties in getting the car started, Sarah realized it wouldn't run no matter what. With no other option, she decided to walk, choosing to go to her grandparents' house, as she had planned to meet her husband there. Even though she now had no idea if her husband was alive or dead, the family continued to walk through the morning. Passing by a damaged storefront, they decided to search for supplies first before continuing. Unexpectedly, he was luckier than Sarah's family as he arrived at the store early and had prepared to restock some essential supplies. Unexpectedly, the store owner suddenly emerged and rushed toward him. Carm had no choice but to defend himself, having already eliminated the threat. However, he was also stabbed in the abdomen, but luckily, he encountered Sarah's family, grateful to find help. Carm immediately offered assistance, but Sarah's husband was a bit hesitant. In the current situation, realizing that Sarah was determined to leave, Carm forcefully grabbed Emily, threatening Sarah to find a doctor for him. Sarah reluctantly agreed, and Carm, in truth, didn't want to harm the kind Emily. He released Sarah when he sensed her intention to cooperate. Sarah, seizing the opportunity, hugged Emily and ran away. Perhaps Carm understood that Sarah's family wouldn't be able to find a doctor for him. In the face of in the radio transmitter, strange noises occasionally emanate, possibly caused by extraterrestrial beings. However, Catherine pays no attention to it and hastily descends the mountain alone to find her sister. When she reaches the congested area, she sees her sister's car but no sign of her body. Catherine assumes her sister followed her advice and sought refuge in some cave. Catherine heads towards the forest, hoping to find her sister there. Earlier, the little girl had taken refuge in a cave, but her parents were nowhere to be found. Catherine couldn't bear to leave the child behind and decided to take her along. Suddenly, some shadows appeared in the forest, revealing a team sent to protect Catherine. They suggest returning to the base immediately, as nobody knows when the next electronic attack will strike. However, Catherine is determined to continue searching for her sister. Leading a team in the search, Catherine stands on a rocky ledge and, through high-powered binoculars, spots someone gathering supplies in a supermarket. Believing it could be her sister, she decides to head there. However, upon reaching the supermarket, they immediately realize something is wrong. All the people who were there a moment ago have disappeared, leaving an eerie silence and only traces of blood. The soldiers, now highly vigilant, the blood stains on the bodies indicate that these people didn't die from the electronic attack. A sense of unease suddenly grips the soldiers' hearts. Simultaneously, a soldier on guard outside is unexpectedly shot and falls to the ground. The soldiers swiftly return fire, causing casualties among their ranks. The attackers remain unseen in the chaos. Catherine, holding the little girl, seeks refuge inside the supermarket. At this moment, Catherine realizes that the little girl has gone missing. They search frantically, unaware that the girl, sensing danger, has quickly hidden inside a freezer. Suddenly, the glass door of the freezer shatters. As everyone rushes towards the sound, they find the girl inside, now a lifeless body in the cold. Catherine, finding the situation too strange, immediately leads the team back to the base. Each person is, if not extraterrestrial, then why such ruthless and inhumane actions? The mysterious force attacking Earth immediately annihilates almost every living creature. Little do they know that this is just the beginning of a deadly machine that suddenly emerges, hunting down and exterminating the few survivors everywhere. At this moment, they once again receive a high-frequency signal from the extraterrestrial beings, but this time, previously, this piece of music was sent into space with the purpose of exploring extraterrestrial life. The results are now evident. The extraterrestrial beings have identified Earth's coordinates based on these signals. Indeed, they remain quite naive. Introducing wolves into the house has become a significant mistake. The most urgent task now is to find a solution. Catherine is confident. The soldiers don't dare delay and get right to work. When everything is ready, the tracking devices begin their operation. After Catherine's meticulous analysis, they finally pinpoint the coordinates of the initial signal source. The opponent constantly moves, but then disappears at a certain coordinate. Surprisingly, the coordinates lead to a nearby mountain pass. Could it be that the extraterrestrial... Catherine wants to understand how the extraterrestrial beings transmit signals, so she decides to accompany the team. The group, ready and resolute, leaves the research base. They follow the coordinates and quickly reach a tranquil forest. Suddenly, something doesn't feel right to Catherine. Waving her hand to signal everyone to halt, a choking sound is heard. A soldier is shot and falls to the ground. Although Catherine remains unharmed, she is deeply frightened. She fears that these extraterrestrial beings are highly intelligent, even cunning. The more Catherine thinks about it, the more she realizes the terrifying possibility that humanity has reached a point of no return in this aspect. They are not the only surviving government organization. The military command center is implementing the strictest defense measures. The personnel inside, but they also cannot communicate with the outside world. Finally, the minister, unable to bear it any longer, dispatches a team to investigate. They are unaware that the moment the ironclad door protecting the military base opens, it will also be exposed to the impending catastrophe. At this moment, Professor Bin and his ex-wife are on their way to the Ministry of Defense to meet their son. Bin is the first to recognize the scene before them is shocking, the ground covered in a pallet of death. The entrance to the base has been breached, clearly taken over by extraterrestrial creatures. Despite the danger, Bin's wife pays no attention and rushes inside to inspect. The interior is as devastated as the outside. Suddenly, a sound emanates from the cells. Bin, showing courage, approaches quietly and opens a gate. Certainly, this seems to be a personal combat tool used by extraterrestrials to deal with any remaining survivors. The bullet hole positions on the creature's head continuously emit CO, indicating that it may be out of ammo. Suddenly, gunfire echoes, causing the robotic dog to cease its activity. It turns out that Bin's ex-wife fired a gun to assist him. Both catching their breath, they hear a scream from the end of the corridor. Trong Phong Du, Sia Hai Nuoi Con Qua Vocu Qua Bin Lo Lang Hoi Con Tre. Ba Vocu Ne Ten John Va Ong Tra Loi Rang On Va Mot Nam Nuoi Kok De Tron Thot Duok. Bin Tho Feo Ne Nam. Sao Du, Ong Hua Voi Bo Truong Rang Se Chon Cat Dua Treda Chet. Ong De Zut Jut Ba, Va Kai Moi Vik De Zong, Bo Truong Yup Ka Duok Chon Kung Cat Con. The couple staged a fake funeral for their family and then returned to the base corridor. Bin continued to be curious about the extraterrestrial creatures. Although their bodies were covered with a layer of metal scales, they still had a primitive nervous system-like body structure. The professor suspected the advanced technology of the extraterrestrial beings. Why did they use such primitive combat tools? When they went outside, Bin inadvertently discovered that their son had died on the nearby road. They couldn't escape the pursuit of the robot dog. The elderly couple felt the pain and sorrow as if the whole world had collapsed. Eventually, they regained their composure. Mrs. Bin transformed into someone else, thinking that the robot was a form of organic creature, so there must be a way to exterminate them. Clearly, the death of John had made Mrs. Bin, so the elderly couple began their journey of resistance. Not only Mr. and Mrs. Bin dared to resist, but the Sarah family was also on the road to Mr. Hoy's house. Earlier, they had faced many difficulties just to reunite with Sarah's husband. As they passed by the hospital, a doctor rushed out and urgently asked Sarah for a small favor. Despite her reluctance, Sarah had to enter the hospital. The doctors and nurses rushed back to the group, talking and walking towards the end of the hallway. In that room, they were taking care of many newborns who had just come into the world after the electronic catastrophe. All of them were now orphans, and the doctors were more than willing to look after them. However, the burden became too overwhelming for them, so they turned to Sarah for help. Despite the initial reluctance, Sarah agreed to care for the. At this moment, Sarah's son rushed forward, excitedly sharing that he had found a familiar face. They went to the hallway to check and found Carrie, who was injured. Despite the tension, Sarah remained calm. She remembered that the other party had taken her daughter, turning her heart into a doctor's responsibility. Quickly, the medical team swarmed around Carrie. As a doctor, the duty was to save lives and provide medical care to everyone. It turned out that the person who. At this moment, there was a sudden gunshot outside the hospital. Carrie immediately sensed that something was wrong. He instructed everyone to go down to the basement for safety and then retrieve the weapons he had with him. Despite the still healing pain, he clenched his teeth, stood guard outside the hospital's lobby, ready to face whatever danger was approaching. Emily, in her intelligence, deduced that the gunfire outside the creatures looked strangely otherworldly, making him hesitant to make any sudden moves. He could only hide behind the reception desk, holding his breath. As the creatures entered the hospital, he discreetly retreated and informed the group. Sarah immediately understood the urgency, and he also didn't forget about the male doctor guarding the baby ward. Despite searching, they couldn't locate him, raising concerns for his safety. The patients, unfortunately, became easy prey for the relentless robot dogs. Their helpless screams echoed through the hospital as some tried to run but were swiftly caught. The male doctor, concerned for the safety of the defenseless children, contemplated returning to protect them. However, Carm, insistent on the survival of Sarah's family, pulled him away. The group narrowly avoided a confrontation with a robot. Carrie explained that she had barricaded the door to the baby's room beforehand. After a night of running, Sarah's family and the group led by Carrie found an empty office to rest. Unexpectedly, Dr. Nam realized that the baby had secretly taken Carrie's gun while he was sleeping. Later, feeling guilty, the child returned to the hospital. Several hours later, Carrie discovered that the doctor was missing. In a way, the doctor had been a savior to them, and regardless of the situation, Carrie searched diligently and finally reached the safe room, only to find Dr. Nam in despair, sitting on the bed. They discovered that all the babies were missing. Evidently, they had been taken away by the robot dogs. Sensing something amiss, Kim and Dr. Nam quickly left the hospital. Not long after, a machine appeared, and with no other option, they hid in a small car, holding their breath in amazement as the robot dog passed over the car roof. It was only while continuing down the deserted streets, they coincidentally encountered a seemingly couple in the middle of the road. Upon closer inspection, they realized it was Professor Bin and his former wife. Unexpectedly, the two had left the research base, carrying the remains of the robot dog. Heading toward the university's laboratory, they intended to research how to deal with the extraterrestrial creatures. Carrie, recognizing the danger on the streets, kindly led Professor. The robot dog appeared more like a human-controlled killing machine than an extraterrestrial creature. Surely, there must be someone else behind it. Bin noticed a peculiar ring-like device on its head, which he suspected to function like an eye, receiving external signals. Tom suddenly recalled that Emily, his sister, couldn't see before, but since the extraterrestrial invasion, her vision had gradually improved. She could now hear. There seems to be a connection between the two discoveries. While discussing this, Emily, who couldn't see before, entered the room and slowly walked towards the robot's body. She claimed to sense something on the table. Professor Bin was astonished and looked at Emily, realizing that this phenomenon couldn't be explained by existing scientific theories. Dr. Nam, standing nearby, interrupted, holding the robot's hand. Several children from the. At that moment, Dr. hurriedly approached the robot, realizing that it couldn't stay here any longer. The group quickly packed their belongings and stepped outside. Unexpectedly, Emily heard a strange sound, and her vision had also been restored. Shortly after, another robot appeared suddenly. While everyone took a deep breath and stood still, Emily, who was at the front, signaled for everyone not to move. Strangely, when the robot approached Emily, it unexpectedly stopped, turned. However, a thorough examination of her eyes revealed nothing unusual. At this point, Sarah made a crucial decision. She headed to the laboratory in the educational building with the group of professors, temporarily giving up the plan to meet her husband. If only the three of them went, they would inevitably face uncertainty on the way, with a crowd carrying the bodies for the robots heading towards the laboratory. Witnessing the cruel scene ahead, they felt. Fortunately, not long after, they finally arrived at the school. The professors worked at the school, and there were generators and many vacant rooms, making it a good place to take refuge. Bin preferred the fully equipped laboratory. He easily removed the eyes from the robot using tools, and to his amazement, he discovered that this was a high-quality device with a binary code that, when decoded, revealed a sequence of genes. He intended to share this news with his wife Helen, but discovered that she was absent-minded. It turns out that Helen inadvertently learned from Sarah that today is Tom's birthday. Helen was in pain because she had just lost her son and couldn't resist advising that even in the end of the world, love for children should not be overlooked. The two mothers silently went out to prepare a birthday present for Tom. Unexpectedly, in a large garage, they suddenly heard cries for help. Allowing enough time for the pregnant woman, Helen, and Sarah to appear, they assisted the pregnant woman in labor in a challenging escape. After some difficulty, they found a small truck and decisively jumped on it. Watching the other party leave, the pregnant woman had difficulty breathing. When the two mothers returned to the school, they quickly wiped the bloodstains off themselves. They had prepared the birthday presents for Tom in advance. With a mysterious, optimistic and hopeful, the astronomer Katerin and the guards struggled to break free from the robot dogs after a night of repairs. Finally, they handled the aftermath for the casualties. Katerin suggested returning to the research facility, but Colonel Cohen, after some difficulty, disagreed, opting to explore further into the forest to locate the source of the extraterrestrial signal. If they turned back now, the sacrifices of the soldiers would be in vain. In no time, they reached an open area, now a smoldering ruin resembling a wasteland, evidence of an explosion caused by something Colonel Cohen had ordered. This seemed to be the coordinates where the signal vanished. He instructed the entire military team to start searching the area. Katerin noticed remnants in the wreckage with organic matter and sensed it resembled the crash site of the extraterrestrial spacecraft. Lost in contemplation, she suddenly noticed a robot dog. Katerin speculated that the explosion might have damaged the robot's sensors. They heard gunfire from a nearby area, only to find that soldiers were provoking the robot dogs, unaware of the consequences. The soldiers harbored deep resentment towards these machines. Colonel Cohen refrained from joining the vengeful group and cautiously scouted the area. Despite their efforts, they couldn't locate the source of the Along the dark hallway, the rescue team rushed towards a swaying figure, but as they got closer, they realized it was Sophia, Katerin's younger sister. Amidst the chaos after the electromagnetic disaster, Sophia had followed her sister's advice and sought refuge in a drainage tunnel in the mountains. When she saw the gruesome scene on the streets, she fully grasped the severity of the situation, causing her entire body to tremble uncontrollably. After a while, Sophia managed to regain her composure. On her way to her sister's research base, she stumbled upon an off-road vehicle. While searching for some supplies, she unexpectedly found a young boy who was miraculously alive, muttering about monsters continuously. Unable to leave the boy behind, Sophia decided to bring him along. Little did they know that before they could get very far, they spotted the creature. Sophia quickly helped the boy hide under the seats, and as the rope, at a critical moment, the sound of gunfire echoed, and a stranger appeared, a girl who seemed adept at rescuing the fortunate survivors. She hurriedly took Sophia and the boy to an unexpected place, the basement of a building. To their surprise, many lucky individuals had gathered here, but the scarcity of food was evident. Men ventured outside to search for supplies, which were becoming increasingly scarce. It wouldn't be long before the people here would. So, early the next morning, Sophia took the boy from the research base and coincidentally met the returning team led by the lieutenant colonel. The two sisters were joyfully reunited, but Sophia couldn't shake off the thought of the survivors in that other place. She hoped her sister could help address the situation. Katerine went to negotiate, but the other party immediately showed a difficult attitude. Now, they couldn't even contact the headquarters. In total, although Katerine understood, there was still a bit of disappointment in her heart. At this moment, outside the window, a flock of birds lined up and flew past. Katerine had an idea. These birds relied on the quantum characteristics of cells to fly in formation without colliding. What if the extraterrestrial creatures operated similarly? Previously, when she was searching for the origin of the extraterrestrial signal, finally, the exact number of these spacecraft was unknown to Katerine. She suddenly had a bold idea. What if she could use signal interference to sever the connection between the spaceship and the robot group? If successful, all the robots would become dormant, like waiting sheep. Feeling that this method could work, early the next morning, the whole group hurriedly set out. They planned to go to that residential area to rescue the lucky The soldiers were ready, each positioning themselves for the impending battle. They moved silently through the dense forest, the darkness of the U-shaped path ahead concealing the ominous atmosphere. Suddenly, they encountered the lifeless bodies of several soldiers on the ground, with shell casings scattered around. It was clear they had been attacked by the extraterrestrial creatures. Without hesitation, the soldiers pressed forward. As the days passed, their supplies dwindled, and the situation became increasingly dire. The soldiers dared not venture outside recklessly, as the extraterrestrial creatures lurked everywhere. Fortunately, the timely arrival of this military unit, led by the highest command, brought a glimmer of hope. The commanding officer immediately instructed everyone to pack their belongings swiftly, preparing for a move to the refuge area within the research base. Unfortunately, contrary to their hopes, a soldier was suddenly hit by a bullet and fell to the ground. The extraterrestrial creatures quickly approached the entrance, prompting an urgent command for a counterattack. Simultaneously, a few soldiers retreated to the basement, closing the door to protect those below. Unexpectedly, the enemy forces outnumbered them, and their dwindling numbers were becoming increasingly evident. Even Catherine remembered her earlier hypothesis and quickly took a small signal transmitter from her backpack. She hoped that the sound emitted could disrupt the communication link between the robot and the command system. At this moment, the robot had started pounding on the basement door, and the lives of everyone below were hanging by a thread. Catherine continued to emit high-frequency sound waves almost every second. A soldier fell for the robot that had reached the side. The pack of robot dogs suddenly started circling in place, seemingly unaware of the human figure nearby. Catherine's experiment had succeeded. Finally, the group of lucky survivors managed to overcome the imminent danger under the escort of the remaining soldiers. They slowly headed towards the research base, and there was a renewed sense of hope. If they could figure out how to deal with the Beside that, on the rooftop, Carrie senses the increasing urgency, and from a distance, the sounds of gunfire and the sight of soldiers advancing into battle reach her ears and eyes. Meanwhile, some in the group feel that it is no longer safe there, and perhaps the military is conducting a counterattack against the extraterrestrial creatures. However, everyone in the group is facing a difficult decision. Is there anywhere safer for them to move to? In the midst of the chaos, the professor feels this time he had mistaken the person. Carrie suddenly regains her eyesight, not something Emily actively sought from a sense of purpose, but rather something she was passively drawn into, like being caught in the whirlwind of normalcy. In the midst of this haze, Emily seems to see the extraterrestrial creature approaching her. Waking up, she only now realizes that the entity has long vanished. Surprisingly, in the middle of the night, as Emily regains consciousness, Emily feels no fear at all. On the contrary, she senses an indescribable sense of familiarity with the extraterrestrial being. In a twist of fate, Helen, on patrol, suddenly appears. Unexpectedly, as she faces the extraterrestrial creature, Helen becomes its target. Emily reaches out to stop it, but her efforts are in vain. She watches helplessly as Helen is shot and killed by the robot. just as everyone rushes to the scene upon hearing the commotion, Professor Bin seems to have lost all sense of the universe, sitting on the ground in profound pain after experiencing this tragedy. The attitudes of those around Emily undergo a noticeable transformation. While Helen met such a tragic end, Emily appears unaffected. People cannot fathom why Emily and the extraterrestrial beings seem to be in alliance. Unable to bear the accusatory glares of those around her, the kind-hearted doctor proactively approaches, offering solace in the quiet courtyard that now feels like a deep wound in Professor Bin's shattered heart. Emily, still immersed in grief for an indeterminate amount of time, notices the robot. It seems to approach her, as if seeking her out. Intrigued, Emily stands up and walks outside the school. On the rooftop, Carrie observes Emily walking alone, prompting him to quickly holster his gun and follow her. When he reaches her, she is already. A handsome young man is rubbing his protruding belly, seemingly unaware of his surroundings. At this moment, the illusion for the robot disappears as it turns away. It turns out that Carium has approached Emily. He believes that the robots want to convey some information to her. Emily decides to follow them into their hideout to find clear answers. Despite Carrion's attempts to dissuade her, he cannot sway Emily's determination. They guide her more effectively than the people in the school who are busy dealing with the aftermath of Helen's death. Only Sarah discovers a note that Emily left behind, letting them know that she has left. Sarah wants to chase after her to bring her back, but she still has her son Tom to take care of. Sarah reluctantly abandons her plans. Outside, they hear the sound of a broken window, and without thinking, they are sure that the extraterrestrial creature. They guide her more effectively than the people in the school who are busy dealing with the aftermath of Helen's death. Only Sarah discovers a note that Emily left behind, letting them know that she has left. Sarah wants to chase after her to bring her back, but she still has her son Tom to take care of. Sarah reluctantly abandons her plans. Outside, they hear the sound of a broken window, and without thinking, they are sure that the extraterrestrial creature has invaded. The decision is clear. Emily feels that this is the extraterrestrial creature's base. She gracefully declines Karam's offer to accompany her. Emily climbs over the railing, jumps down to the black structure, and enters a clearly marked door. In the blink of an eye, she finds herself in a long, enclosed space with a narrow and dark pathway. Gathering her courage, Emily walks forward slowly. She notices many children in this place, unsure of their specific purpose. Curious, she moves forward, only to find a thin, bony arm reaching out. Emily's face twists in horror as she sees a living person inside, a frail and frightened figure. When their hands touch, a peculiar vision unfolds in Emily's mind. This place is unlike Earth. Extraterrestrial beings are causing suffering, tossing the deceased into the river. Clearly, on the woman's hand, there is a tattoo identical to Emily's. Terrified, Emily rushes outside but is soon blocked by two robot dogs. The surroundings start to shake, and outside the spaceship, chaos ensues. Emily, suspended mid-air, awaits news from Karam. Witnessing this unbelievable scene, time seems to stand still. Under the pressure of the extraterrestrial beings, the survivors have organized a resistance. Professor Bin has successfully studied the extraterrestrial beings, retrieving several of their bodies from beneath the river. These beings exhibit a human-like appearance but with distinctive mutations. Unfortunately, many specimens have suffered from cellular degradation, resulting in their demise. Relying on robot dogs, they venture outside for hunting. Professor Bin speculates that the extraterrestrials have abducted children to utilize. At present, the biological weapon is undergoing clinical trials, and if successful, it holds the potential to eradicate the entire extraterrestrial population. A damaged spacecraft has recently crashed into the nearby river. There is an opportunity to capture surviving extraterrestrials for experimentation with the biological weapon. Keem and Bai-As have prepared a group of lucky survivors armed with weapons, heading towards the spacecraft. The Karam squad moves to the riverbank, observing the robot dogs patrolling in the distance. Everyone holds their breath, waiting for the electromagnetic interference signal to disrupt the robots. Karam hides under a car, tense as a robot dog slowly approaches. At the critical moment, the electromagnetic interference disrupts the robot's functionality immediately. Disabled, it becomes an easy target, and the group takes turns. The group looks around in astonishment, surrounded by black metal walls and scattered machinery. What surprises them is the complete absence of any trace of extraterrestrial beings. It feels as if this spaceship has been thoroughly cleaned. The team separates to explore, and to their surprise, they discover an unconscious girl on a seat. Upon careful examination, they realize it's Emily's sister, who has been missing for half a year. The fortunate survivors, now facing heavy losses, regrouped at the base. Emily was rescued by Karam, and the entire group had to retreat to the stronghold. The direct involvement of the extraterrestrials in the battle posed a significant challenge, and they had to quickly strategize to counter the imminent attack. In the echoing halls resonating with ferocious roars, Sarah, exhausted and drenched in sweat, found solace as she witnessed her son Tom safe and unharmed. A mixture of surprise and joy washed over her, but this relief was tinged with a sense of defeat prevailing in the aftermath of the battle. The leaders among the fortunate survivors were grappling with self-reproach, having believed that neutralizing the robotic dogs would secure their peace. Did they overcome their genetic flaws since that day? Karam wondered as he approached Emily. He asked her about the experiences on the alien spaceship. In a vague state of mind, Emily's responses sounded like fragmented dreams. Although pained, Karam chose to overlook the unclear information. Professor Bin and Joe, on the other hand, couldn't stand it and pressed her with similar questions. Emily, in her emotional haze, kept the detail. Confronted with the circular tattoo on the other person's arm, it is likely that they are a member of the extraterrestrial beings. Emily's return without leaving a trace makes it difficult for Dew to explain. Dew suggests Professor teach her how to use biological weapons to prove effectiveness, but Professor Bin refuses, as there is no evidence proving Emily is an extraterrestrial being. Meanwhile, she is just a child. Emily encounters the leader of the extraterrestrials, who is also the woman in the virtual image seen earlier. The counterpart asserts that Emily is, indeed, an extraterrestrial being. She requests Emily to return to the group of survivors for a crucial mission, the assassination of Professor Bin. The reason behind this is that he is researching a biological weapon capable of threatening the lives of all extraterrestrial beings. Emily faces a difficult choice, torn between her human identity and her empathetic connection with the extraterrestrial group. On the other side of the research base, Catherine and the guards are still searching for the extraterrestrial hideout, but unfortunately, there is no progress. Just as they reach a dead end, two soldiers lead an unfamiliar man who is unconscious. Medical personnel rush to provide assistance. Catherine discovers a notebook in the man's backpack filled with confusing and intricate content. At this moment, they notice a tattoo on the injured person's arm. Everyone becomes extremely tense, questioning why he came here. It turns out that the man has just escaped from the extraterrestrial hideout, facing a close pursuit. His body, with minimal medical care, took a bullet, and he exerted his last strength to reach the mountaintop. Shortly after, he faints. The two guards quickly discover him, and as soon as he regains consciousness, the first question the extraterrestrial. They came to Earth using the music signal T, and the extraterrestrial is straightforward, stating that they followed the signal to find Catherine. She couldn't help but feel terrified, with many questions lingering. Why did he get shot? Why is he looking for Professor Bin? The extraterrestrial answers, expressing disagreement with their kind invading humans. So, he escaped to find she recorded an advanced physics formula that the extraterrestrial used as the basis for researching space jump technology. Catherine was extremely surprised, feeling that this time she had found a valuable report. However, the truth was not that simple, as nobody expected that the group pursuing the extraterrestrial had found their location. A bullet pierced through the window, immediately incapacitating a female soldier. Following that, Catherine reacted swiftly, immediately pulling her younger sister into the escape route behind the door. Unfortunately, during the attempt to protect the two sisters, the lieutenant was accidentally hit by a bullet, leading to her death. Now, only one person remained, desperately trying to pull Catherine away. They hurriedly fled until the area became quiet again. An extraterrestrial silently approached the bedside of the wounded person. The crucial knowledge contained in the notebook must be quickly found, perhaps by locating Professor Bin. It is uncertain whether Professor Bin is in imminent danger at the moment, as all the survivors in the school are immersed in a beautiful dream. Karam inadvertently notices Emily sneaking into the grand hall, unexpectedly preparing to take action against Professor. Fortunately, the opponent awakens in time. Having endured this intense battle, Emily's extraterrestrial identity has been conclusively proven. She is confined to a separate room while Professor Bin, still not free from fear, grapples with the situation. In case of any unforeseen events, the outcome of the extraterrestrial research will serve as Professor Bin's final testament. With a solemn demeanor, he makes a crucial decision, quietly unlocking the tightly sealed cabinet to retrieve a new. Emily's eyes immediately welled up with tears, reflecting regret and endless pleading. Professor Bin consoled her, saying, "This is just a tranquilizer." He then forcibly injected the virus into Emily's arm within moments. The girl sensed something unusual as she lost all strength, beads of sweat forming relentlessly on her forehead. A chilling sensation enveloped her. In Professor Bin's heart, Emily weakened quickly due to the virus invented by Professor Bin. Knowing the danger to her extraterrestrial genes, he suggested using insulin, but the organization DOE leader knew their insulin supply had run out. Karam led a group to a nearby supermarket for a search. Finally, they found the pharmacy counter, but the window was tightly locked. They efficiently unlocked it and began searching for insulin. Keem followed a child standing in front of the supermarket door when suddenly they noticed a noise nearby. Carefully investigating, they discovered a malfunctioning robot dog. Although it posed no threat, an uneasy feeling lingered in Keem's mind. After regaining composure, quickly, he realized the child he was with had disappeared. Karam anxiously searched everywhere for him. He spotted the child's hat in front of the supermarket and instantly knew he had been taken by the extraterrestrials. The weight of everyone's hearts grew heavy as they sought medicine at the cost of a life. The question lingered, was this sacrifice justified by the medicine's effectiveness? In a short time, Emily's life was not in immediate danger. A short-haired man inside happened to be Emily's father, Jonathan. The story is quite coincidental. When the extraterrestrials invaded, he was in another city and went through considerable challenges to find his way here. Along the way, he befriended Chloe and her mother. Surprisingly, the young boy, like Emily, could establish a certain connection with the robot equipped with a radar. The trio, guided by Nathan, could easily evade the Upon seeing the photo, he quickly recognized Sarah's husband and led them to the base on the upper floors of the school building. The reunion of the long-separated couple was joyful, but for Chloe, who had been accompanying Jonathan, there was a sense of loss. Along the journey they shared, an emotional connection had blossomed, surpassing mere friendship. After Jonathan learned about his daughter's captivity, he became extremely angry. Who gives them the right to do this? In this situation, most were members of the couple's support team, reluctantly making compromises. Both the young boy, Nathan, and Emily possessed psychic abilities, making the situation more complex. They discreetly observed Professor Bin, memorizing the room where Emily was held captive. However, even now, they couldn't rescue her. Emily herself sensed something unusual and remembered what the extraterrestrial leader had said about Binder Reith. Despite the opponent's apparent ease, she now felt powerless, her eyes filled with desperation along the desolate path. A frail figure struggled ahead, a sickly individual facing hardship. The vigilant guards scrutinized closely. Wasn't this the child taken by extraterrestrials just yesterday? The survivors rushed to assist the child, witnessing the evident pain in his wounded condition. Could it be missing components? A man hastily separated the wound to confirm, and behind him, a detonation shockwave almost flipped the entire grand hall. Everyone was terrified. Unexpectedly, this was just the beginning. Countless extraterrestrials surged in, ruthlessly attacking the survivors on the scene. In Professor Bin's room, the situation worsened. All the viruses were heavily damaged after unexpectedly, the young boy acted faster than expected. He immediately rushed into the warehouse to retrieve the pickaxe. Emily screamed, and Karam, along with her family, realized something was wrong. Amidst the chaos, the father, sensing the dire situation, silently slipped out through the back door. In less than an hour, the survivors' base had turned into an extraterrestrial nest. However, Professor Bin managed to escape. At this moment, despite her weakness, Emily still had the strength to speak. Professor Bin, seeing this, reluctantly admitted to injecting the virus into her, proving the extraterrestrial weapon's existence. Everyone was furious, especially Sarah's mother, who seemed on the verge of losing control. Professor Bin insisted he had done nothing wrong. Then, he fetched an insulin syringe, claiming it could suppress Emily's condition. So, in the illusion, Sa-Cha and Emily, a natural pair, were close for a long time. Returning to Professor Bin, he's now isolated, except for Doe, who still supports him. Despite venous damage, Emily is infected. Taking a sample from her body in the lab can eliminate the alien threat. Unexpectedly, Sa-Cha overhears their conversation, interrupting it. During the quiet night, the kid approached Professor Pin, believing that Emily could only be safe if the other party died. However, the idea of completely destroying the aliens was beyond his consideration. Pulling out a dagger, he prepared to strike, but suddenly, Dr. Az, patrolling nearby, rushed in. The two immediately engaged in a fight. Sa-Cha, staying calm, delivered one precise stab after another to Sam. Surprisingly, he returned to where Dr. Az was injured, relentlessly attacking until the opponent ceased breathing. Only when it was near dawn did Karam discover that Az had died. Everyone woke up abruptly, and Twee, pretending not to know anything, joined the search throughout the store. No signs of intrusion were found, and Professor Bin had disappeared. Carrie suspected if he feared charges and escaped. At the same time, the two sisters, Katarine and Emily, were conveniently searching for Professor Bin. Unaware of his whereabouts, they resorted to the books he had published. In no time, they found his workplace address. Finally, Katarine identified that Professor Bin was working at a university in London. Upon leaving the library, Katarine intentionally took a backpack with her, revealing her high regard for the notebook containing. The three of them embarked on their daring journey to London and stumbled upon a small isolated house. Initially intending to search for supplies, they accidentally heard the sound of a military vehicle starting up. Investigating the garage, they discovered an old man sitting in a car, contemplating taking his own life. Hastily pulling him out, they provided timely first aid, and fortunately, he seemed unharmed. Katarine, deeply saddened by the old man's story, invited him to join their journey to London in search of Professor Pin. The idea was to salvage what remained of the world, a semblance of bringing a new hope to the elderly man. The four of them quickly got into a car, a much more convenient mode of transportation than walking on two legs across a forest. Suddenly, they heard a distress signal coming from within. They swiftly got out of the car and investigated. The group faced another wave of extraterrestrial attacks as they abandoned the damaged car and sought refuge in a container area. To their surprise, the aliens had already anticipated their move and ambushed them from atop the cargo containers. Caterine and the others found themselves under fire, and the elderly man, inattentive, was shot in the leg. With no other option, they fought back while retreating. Ultimately, they managed to. The group faced another wave of extraterrestrial attacks as they abandoned the damaged car and sought refuge in a container area. To their surprise, the aliens had already anticipated their move and ambushed them from atop the cargo containers. Caterine and the others found themselves under fire, and the elderly man, inattentive, was shot in the leg. With no other option, they fought back while retreating. Ultimately, facing imminent danger, the soldier sacrificed himself with a grenade, allowing Caterine and the others to escape. The elderly man stayed behind to confront the approaching enemy, making the ultimate sacrifice. Caterine, now with 2 companions, ran away, having experienced a profound loss. In London, aliens search for Professor Bin, causing chaos. A squad approaches Emily, but Tom's alert helps them retreat. Adapting to a blocked entrance, they face minimal opposition. Constantly moving, they aim to escape quickly. Until they reached a large bus station, and with no apparent danger around, they decided to turn it into a temporary base. Doe regularly used the walkie-talkie, hoping to contact other resistance groups. Tom felt a bit desperate, suspecting that only they remained in the city. Emily's situation worsened as the initial supply of insulin quickly diminished and was running out. To retrieve Emily's medication, Nathan, Emily's father, and Tom's younger brother decided to risk it. Carrie stood guard, their only unreliable support. Without hesitation, the two armed themselves and ventured out to find insulin. Quickly, they located a hospital not far away. Splitting up to explore, Nathan conveniently found insulin in a medicine cabinet. As he prepared to reunite with his son, the aliens' purpose is clear. They want to know Professor Bin's whereabouts. Today, he left the shopping center, and Nathan doesn't know where he is. Seeing the extraterrestrials about to harm Tom, Nathan hastily claims that the professor is nearby and can lead them there. In reality, it's Jonathan's deceptive plan. He points to a mobile building where the professor is hiding, and inside, many survivors are present. The alien hurried back to the battlefield, leaving only a woman behind. Carrie stood guard over Nathan and Tom, waiting for the opportune moment. Seizing the chance when the extraterrestrial wasn't paying attention, Nathan swiftly attacked, disarming and choking her tightly. After confirming the alien woman's lifeless state, he quickly checked on his son Tom. To his dismay, he discovered Tom's arm had been accidentally hit. Emily keenly sensed her father's anguish, feeling deeply moved. She realized the trouble she had caused her family and was now acutely aware of the cold-blooded killings by the extraterrestrials. It was at this moment that she accepted Professor Bin's ruthless approach to eliminate the aliens, not out of concern for his safety. After escaping the shopping center, Professor Bin had hidden alone, collecting supplies in a supermarket. Inside, there are two more soldiers facing difficulties. The squad initially had several members, but after numerous battles with extraterrestrials, only 3 remain. Their achievements are commendable, having successfully defeated a large group of aliens and even capturing one as a prisoner of war. Sensing the fervor within these soldiers, the captive immediately shared their own background. Bin wanted to bring Emily, holding the virus, to the lab to potentially release the biological weapon. The leading soldier, deeply moved, decided to go with Bin to meet Emily at the shopping center. Upon arrival, they discovered the extraterrestrials had taken over, causing concern. In the adjacent room, they heard desperate cries. Curious, Bin found someone fighting an extraterrestrial, and the soldier explained today happened to be his son's birthday, which softened Bin's anger towards the extraterrestrial. Despite knowing these invaders were ruthless, his conscience reminded him not to treat them in such a way. Exhausted, he decided to rescue the extraterrestrial woman quietly, stealing the handcuff key when the night fell and all soldiers were asleep. Ben felt conflicted about finding her a new hiding place. Despite being on opposite sides, Ben felt that no one should be treated cruelly. Observing the injuries on the extraterrestrial woman, Professor Ben quietly left the room, deciding to help her find some pain relief. He headed towards a place not far from where Chuan used to live, passing through a street from his former school. Returning to the familiar place, he encountered a scene vastly different from the bustling crowd before. The calm professor found in the silent night. Professor Ben used the walkie-talkie to communicate with Doe, who continued to assist him. He shared the story of the young boy's grudge against him, revealing the doctor's betrayal and Doe's suggestion on bringing Emily to the lab. The old professor never forgot the plan to create a virus to eliminate the extraterrestrials, and on the second day, as dawn broke, he received news that the opposition was preparing to forcibly take Emily to the lab. After hearing the news, the professor, a bit stirred, decided to meet them immediately. Overcoming difficulties, he silently sighed with relief that the experimental equipment was intact. Meanwhile, Doe, prepared to forcibly take Emily to the lab, used a gun to coerce her. Emily, now willing to help defeat the extraterrestrials, revealed her cooperative attitude. However, Doe had different plans and was ready to intervene, quickly disclosing. This revelation exposed Doe's malevolent nature, and as the group rushed in, understanding the situation, they grasped Emily's perspective. Chaos ensued as everyone expressed their desire to accompany her to the lab. On the other side, the sisters Catherine and Emily were searching for Professor Ben. Unfortunately, their attempts in every classroom and even checking the receptionist's list proved futile. Catherine, while seeking solace with a drink, noticed a lit meeting room across from her. With certainty that someone was alive there, the three swiftly traversed the square filled with lifeless bodies and quietly entered the illuminated room. To their surprise, it was a large laboratory, but unfortunately, no living soul was found. The center of attention was a testing machine connected to a robot dog next to a bloodied corpse. The complex data displayed on it left her astonished. Finally, she began to investigate what this man was doing and how he died. After moving the man's body aside, Catherine delved into the robot's data and discovered some constants and formulas, similar to those on a notebook. It seemed the man was researching the principles of the robot's operation. The data possibly referenced extraterrestrial scientific and technical. She discovered that the robot's processing system was a supercomputer brain, and there was an incomplete dangerous action. He could have countless contingency measures, possibly foreseeing events. Meanwhile, Sophia accidentally found a cell phone on the floor. Catherine speculated that the man used it while alive and traced the power cord to begin recharging it. After turning it on, Sophia noticed numerous stored videos. They were a diary the man had recorded. Catherine discovered a surviving man who, in a lab, had observed a wounded robot dog. Convinced of his genius, she attempted to decipher the dog's actions by connecting to its control interface. Progress was slow until an accidental injury caused the man's demise due to excessive blood loss. After Catherine reviewed the recorded data, she realized that the man, in all likelihood, manipulated the robot dog through a laptop. As she prepared to re-examine the data, her hand accidentally got pierced by the robot. This incident hinted that the man might have suffered a similar injury. Analyzing the data further, Catherine made a terrifying discovery: the robot dogs had the ability to reverse time momentarily. The extraterrestrials weren't intergalactic travelers, but masters of time control. Catherine's theory suggested they came from the future. This revelation brought relief, reframing the extraterrestrials as time travelers rather than hostile invaders. Sophia shared exciting news. The man's diary hinted that a school branch still existed in London. Professor Bin is ready at that branch. Without hesitation, Catherine and her two sisters quickly pack up and embark on a new journey. Along the way, they traverse blood-drenched streets, where extraterrestrial beings are cleaning up corpses and robot dogs. They must tread carefully to avoid detection, and Sophia narrowly escapes being discovered. Luckily, she manages to hide in the trunk of the car, staying out of the extraterrestrial sight. It seems the enemy has noticed. Slowly opening each car trunk, they meticulously inspect. When the stranger reaches Sophia's hiding spot, a gunshot rings out, attracting more extraterrestrials. The trio dashes madly, finding refuge in a new boarding house. They can't remember how many close calls they've had. The weight of responsibility quickly settles in, but after a short rest, the group embarks on a cautious journey, only to encounter Karam, an unexpected ally. Delighted, Karam leads them to the final laboratory, where they find Professor Bin. However, to their surprise, Karam wears an expression of sorrow, revealing that he successfully conducted a meeting with the extraterrestrials yesterday. Emily is eager to initiate the virus release experiment. The virus's unique nature requires Emily to infiltrate the alien hive using a transmission method. Initially resistant, she eventually chooses to stand with humanity. However, before the plan starts, Emily feels weakened and powerless. Mrs. Sarah noticed this and quickly called Dr. Bin to check. After examining Emily's blood, Dr. Bin's expression became complicated as the virus was rapidly multiplying in her body. Insulin was not effective. Dr. Bin explained that Emily's weakened immune system due to pregnancy allowed the virus to invade. Doe swiftly took Emily to the alien's lair. Sophia suspected something and, in the darkness, witnessed Emily's impending death. Doe sneaked to the enemy's location while Sasha rushed to Emily's room, finding her distressed. Assuming Bin's guilt, Sasha confronted him, forcing the professor to reveal Emily's pregnancy and the virus threat. Furious and realizing Emily carried his child, Sasha decided to take her to the alien spaceship for help, holding Bin at gunpoint. Sasha, motivated by the hope for Emily's cure, forcibly took her to the alien spaceship. Mrs. Sarah wanted to accompany them. In his anger, Sasha confronted Professor Bin, knocking him out. As they headed to the spaceship, Professor Bin, revived by Nathan, was about to follow. However, Bin stopped him, cautioning about the risk of Emily infecting the aliens with the virus. Professor Bin, determined to carry out his plan, decides to escape from the group and takes off alone. He remembers his promise to his wife, to eliminate all the extraterrestrials. Spotting a spaceship in the distance, the group tries to approach but is stopped by alien guards. To cure Emily, they must reveal Professor Bin's location. Despite Basara refusing to surrender, a sudden gunshot from behind makes Sasha reveals his determination, now focused solely on saving Emily. Despite Emily's brave resistance, she is forcibly dragged into the spaceship, immobilized. Catherine shares her research findings with Professor Bin, suggesting that the extraterrestrials may come from the future. However, their exact motives remain unknown. As they discuss fervently in the room, a sudden gunshot pierces the air. Professor Bin, unable to escape, hides behind a lab bench as the extraterrestrials search the room. They move on to another area, leaving behind their leader, who is investigating something. Suddenly, Professor Bin emerges, grabs a weapon, and swiftly attacks the leader. He questions her about Emily's whereabouts. The leader, somewhat defiant, reveals that she has known Bin's plan for a while. She has arranged for Emily to be upon discovering the extraterrestrial ship taking off. Professor Bin and the group lock the main door but are unable to escape. Helplessly watching the spacecraft ascend, they seek shelter in a nearby apartment building. In a brief conversation, Professor Bin learns that Sasha can communicate with the extraterrestrials.